Jambor Zordan Yami Jazon, Manum Jambor, Nagata, Bakar Dargam Santo, Shermaldo, Stumba Turje Janla Ki Jom Sar.
Today, the teaching that I'm going to give you today is Gundam Tropol's teaching on practice, diligent practice, the treasury of diligent practice. And before this, I would like to let you know that I don't have the oral transmission. During the translation of biography of Shakyamuni Buddha, I translated this into Mandarin, but I don't have the oral transmission of Gundam Tropol, which because mostly in Tibetan Plateau we don't really have not many people have the oral transmission of Gundam Tropol's teaching. Also, on top of this particular teaching, I also will give you two oral transmission. One is
Janlab Samba Toba in Chota Jibin Zimbershow, Sholom Kandaran Killer, Tojan Yomon Kimato, doesn't Maron Shipena, Zanto Doni Blobresho, Ranjin Gambi, Semchin, to Japan number there, and Shakti on Japajan, Nibrokav Chinsan, Dalajan Jim Chato, Shekura Sumerik, Yonkaran Kalembada, Yerka Janlam Baruch, Kanab the Kapanta Bur, Rivachiva Kanjik, and the Marish, Unishan the Marugona, Yang, Jan Damba Tavrish. Dornam Gudam Kibai, Pandemanam Kana, Bar, my Unutan, Dinger Kan, San Dala Lembra, Show, Dead of Kanja Chuji, Stopachame, Marbaja, Chukan Jima Shibi, Jimbi, Chanwa, Chopra, Show, Jib Lojon Circum get my trouble, Dambando, and there's no anti Jimcher, gives you a lot of time, Zappa. Wo manga lam ge wo number charity of some higher ngatra jigso nyon dabjet pami zemjlam gor jergin yixing dirke jinjagorojon nostalgigne xtan metsun dolar membrum zot layan zogo sur nyambo yitsu topir tsa roji don gombe dawa chigju de konat ninga khwaritun don dam chapir karzonzo ngon karman so sog larji yen khwarkund zandar karam nyam tu gavrji shi nyangjo nam Anin Jiron Kori, Semjanoktan de Sala Wuyonshire, the Jampan gives some Kurjunde, Jampan gives some should Kurd ten round chins and Hali Tujantor. Aman Andrew Gomprandi, Go Contori, de Horandi, Indian Tartari, Kamsaran de Ichin, Lomama Yamjin Dalamzud. Yerin Kori Pansum Tatala, Yet Mumbi Sambal Hopunga, Tol Harchin, Rovim Chordom Cho, Chun the Trim Jangim Cho, the Zon, Shiram Gontong Elgum Tatak, Defer Kandala, Tenim John, the Yamnang and Drum Tamita and Joram Go, Mankoro Landurum Zoda, Tikan of Sanjo Trodanton, get a Shisham Sambakarla, Son Pugurandon, Getcher Drum Do Johnson, Jampan Jiba Mangayan. Tunda la machu sama zerum gontiksum gervi tamke lama chu dongo ji ya anyang ka yan the mabjit lopsor nam tam derme geven roa kana nen kori yansar letur jan vaskardan gavi sus kirin of derden jan der keverjo jibander apjon jibdem be meshir dav gepi tse gala dagchig khunlup Shinang Sansum Gi Mamtum Bagayerle Garu Garton Gi Tis, Gendambar Tonchak Ngalani, Samgi Wison on Lodrum Tome Pem, Churton Olor of Lava Geo, Chirkur Kupchuk Golden Lord Dava, Guppy, Tse, Nierchigla,
the two oral transmissions was the 8 verses of Training the Mind from Lanri Tangpa and the Song of Victory from Ponsog Rinpoche, composed by Ponsog Rinpoche. 8 verses of Training Mind, although it has only 8 verses, but I really hope that you could take the time and contemplate each of the 8 verses. It's very easy to recite, to chant, to read, but to practice those verses is very difficult. But still, we should train ourselves accordingly to this way that's described in the 8 verses, so that we are proper Mahayana practitioners. Otherwise, if we're too disturbed and not following these teachings, then that's not a proper Mahayana practitioner. The Song of Victory, composed by Ponsog Rinpoche, has very supreme and very unique causes and conditions. Therefore, whenever you want to start anything new, it's important to chant the Song of Victory before you start anything new, including your personal career or personal affairs. You should then read this Song of Victory beforehand. It will help you to dispel obstacles. Or whenever you encounter some kind of treacherous road, then that's the time to also chant it beforehand or during that bottleneck, whatever you encounter. Whenever you encounter anything difficult, it's a good opportunity to chant it or chant it at the beginning of conducting anything. That very unique auspicious arising will give you power and will give you blessings, so that you will be able to finish whatever you're doing smoothly. Just as nowadays, there are people who can smoothly and successfully finish whatever they start, and there are people who can't do that at all. They encounter obstacles on the way, whatever and whenever they do anything. So it is really that causes and conditions and that dependent arising. So how do we then create auspicious dependent arising then? It's important to supplicate to the Guru, to the protector, to the deity, and to the dharmas and teachings that you practice often, such as in the previously during the 10 dharmas that's taught by Gampopa, where it talks about how we should chant whatever is helpful to us, the dharmas that's very helpful to us. Of course, for people who don't have any faith, they probably feel that what's the point? But for this kind of phenomenal world, it's quite important to remember that there is a strong power behind that is the condition, and that is the dependent arising. Ponsog Rinpoche gave us this teaching in the Song of Victory. Not only the teaching of it is on the 3 yanas, in fact, it has a special dependent arising where it could help us to dispel all the obstacles. And this kind of teaching is called the pith instruction. In our life, in our practice, even some ordinary things that we want to finish or we want to conduct in our lives is quite important to create this auspicious arising beforehand. Therefore, I give you the oral transmission at the very beginning of the class. And today, the teaching I'm going to give you is the teaching on practice. And the title is Advice on the Practice of Essential Sacred Dharma. Over here, the concise title is The Teaching on Practice. Gundam Trungpa, I think some practitioners probably are not so familiar with him, but in fact, lots of scholars are very familiar with him. He is a very unique person, very accomplished and a great person. Although he didn't stay in this world for a long period of time, he died at the age of 49 back in 1951. He passed away at a very young age, but in a short period of time that he lived in this world, he gave lots of teaching in different aspects of this life of this world. Many people put different tags on him. Some say that he's a traveler. Some say he is an artist. Some say he's a poet. Some say that he is a romantic. Some say that he is he's an enlightened master. And some say that he is someone who contributed a lot in the field of sociology as well as politics. He went to Sri Lanka, India, as well as Tibet and Nepal. He went to many places. Unlike nowadays, how it's very easy to commute, but at the time he was traveling, it was during World War II. It's important to remember it was a very special time. And he did not have lots of money. He actually painted and sold his painting in order to travel around to different places. So many people had different tags, put different tags on him. But today we're not going to talk about other tags of him. We're not going to talk about how he's an accomplished traveler, an artist, and a poet, and so on. But today we're going to talk about his practice. His level of realization is really high. He, in fact, left lots of writings and treatises. And within his writings, we can feel that there's so much blessings and strength inside his writing. Lots of Khenpos in Larongar, they really like the teachings passed down from Gundam Trungpa. He wrote some teachings in prison. In the prison, it's the song composed in prison, and he also wrote a commentary on Nagarjuna's Madhyamika. And when I just came to Larongar, I read that commentary every day. And within that commentary, it talks a lot about the very unique view of Madhyamika. He also wrote the White Annal, which was not finished by the time he died. He also wrote a journal of traveling the world. In fact, he didn't really travel all around the world, but he traveled to the Southeast Asia, including India and so on. Within his journal, he wrote down lots of interesting things. He also could be called as an archaeologist. He investigated lots of those ancient artifacts and so on. He had a friend who was an Indian professor or archaeologist. At that time, his friend Rahul translated some Tibetan text into English, but that translated text is not lost. He also translated from Sanskrit to English, or he translated Dharmapada Sutra from Sanskrit. Part of it, not all of it, because Dharmapada Sutra is quite a big work. He traveled around to India with only pen and paper. When I went to India with Ponsokar Rinpoche, we had the book that's written by Gundam Trungpa. He wrote in his journal saying how much it cost of the ticket traveling from one place to the other by train ticket, and how many statues there are in between, and so on. It's quite detailed. Of course, nowadays the commute system is very much changed. But in other areas, I think his documentation of that time is still quite valuable. scholars in China, in mainland China, they studied Genden Chopo during the World Youth Buddhist Symposium. At that time, they wrote, they actually did their doctorate essays based on Genden Chopo, or on the teachings of Genden Chopo. Maybe because people think that Genden Chopo is such a renowned master, therefore they want to write about him. But today, of course, our teaching on his writing is not because he's very renowned, rather it's very valuable. He was born in Qinghai province, and he was then studied at a monastery in Qinghai province, in a Gelupa monastery. What's the name of that monastery? In Lablon Monastery, and then he went to Tripong. He also debated over there. He then went to India and then came back to Lhasa, and he was imprisoned in Lhasa for about 3 years. There was a scholar who did an interview with the wife of Genen Chopo, whose name is Yuzhong. And I think in the book of that scholar, in that interview, he said that Genen Chopo also has a daughter. Genen Chopo, during the time of staying in the prison, he had a friend in prison, and her name is also Yuzhong. After he was released from prison, he told his disciple, saying that you should provide whatever Yuzhong needs. You can give her whatever she wants. And after Yuzhong went back to her hometown, I think because she went to Lhasa from her hometown, and after she was released from prison at the same time as Genen Chopo, and then she went back to her hometown, and all the people around her hometown asked her, so what did you do there? And she said she met a Rinpoche over there whose name is Genen Chopo. And when people asked, well, so what is he? And she said, maybe a beggar. And later on, she said that, and later on she sent some ghee and some food to him afterwards. The wife, whose name is also Yuzhong, and she was asked by the interviewer and saying that she doesn't think that there was another girlfriend whose name is Yuzhong. During the time of his passing, he chanted the aspiration of Mahaati. He didn't write too much, but his teaching could be said as the Vajra words of enlightened ones. We should not only appreciate his art and his poetry, rather we should really appreciate his high level of realization. And that inner realization is what makes him very different from all the other celebrities and so on. So today we're going to learn the teachings from him. This teaching, I think it's quite meaningful and valuable in this modern world. At that time, he had lots of prophets, and his insights about the society and the society in the future is very unique in such a way, especially his wisdom to foreseeing what is going to happen in this world, including the economic changes and the turbulence of political situation, especially back then at such a unique era. His articles, his teaching was very sharp. Of course, that's not what our topic is today. If you have faith, then you should read into or study and read into the books about him. There are many researches that's done in English language as well as in Chinese language. Of course, I've read there are books which are the research and study about him, and some of them are done through the people who are not Buddhists. And their understanding of Buddhism is rather not so accurate and not really the meaning or the intention of Gunum Chopo. Anyhow, I'm not going to be so extensive on the biography of Gunum Chopo. You should read it yourself, otherwise I'll waste the time today in class. I have lots of different stories about him. There are some couples, they really like Gunum Chopo, including the biography and life of him. Anyhow, let's get into the teaching of practice. This is a teaching that then should be taken to heart. It says that compassionate power of three jewels, reliable refuge that never deceives, calming all illusions of meaningless samsara, bless our minds to turn to the Dharma. The sentient beings who are dwelled in this meaningless samsara, only by the power of three jewels, such illusion will be then pacified and their minds can be turned to the Dharma. May all your blessings, may the blessings then bless. When the blessings then emerge into our mind, just as Long Chenpa said, how may the Dharma pacify our affliction and affliction to become the path and the affliction becomes wisdom. So this is quite important that our mind is then blended with the Dharma. How do we contemplate on all the affairs in this world then? It says then in the second verse, whatever we ponder, the affairs of the world have no more essence than a sesame seed. What we strive for in this world, including fame and wealth and so on, they have no essence. So transform our mind in this short lifetime. Starting now, review the essential sacred Dharma. Review the essential treasure of the sacred right Dharma, just as the Dharma such as Mahāti, such as the non-dual wisdom, and so on. Our life is like we're like riding a train that is full of 8 worldly dharmas. But lots of the things that we strive for in this world really have no essential meaning or value. Therefore, after noticing the lack of essence, lack of such value, we should take a swift turn from the direction to samsara. That's the second verse. In the third verse, then it says that the time of youth is but a summer flower. It's beautiful, but it's very easy to then to wither, and the luster of beauty is but a winter rainbow. The rainbow that appears in winter, it may appear for just one moment and then disappear right away. So our youth is just like the summer flower. Within a few months, fall will come and the flower will wither very soon. And our beauty, our appearance will then go away very soon. Sometimes there are people shows the picture of themselves when they were young, and I would look at them and say that, wow, how I should bless you. It doesn't look like you because you've aged, and it's very difficult to then realign the person on the photo and the person standing in front of my eyes. There are people who are more beautiful and less beautiful, but still, the young pictures, the youthful pictures, are so much better than the aged presence, the reality. Nowadays, there are Photoshop and softwares that could then change yourself into much older age on the software. And once I actually played on this software and tried to see how I looked like when I was young just through the software. Anyhow, since human life does not last long, practice the essential sacred Dharma now. People nowadays, they would consider that, yes, youth is important and the luster of beauty is important. On one hand, it's quite in this modern society, people do place importance onto the appearance. But what's more important is a compassionate heart. If a person is very compassionate and really kind inside, then it doesn't matter how their appearance would change. People would still like to get together with them and interact with them because of their kindness. The appearance, the skin that you're wearing is not as important as the value that you have or the compassion you have. It's important to realize everything is impermanent. I see lots of people in the morning, but in the afternoon, I do not see them anymore. So in the Dharmapada Sutra, it says that I see some people, but in the afternoon, that those people would have, some of those people would pass away, and there are people that I see yesterday and today, they're no longer living in this world. So we should understand this is important. This is impermanence. And beauty is not permanent. What's really important is not to try to maintain such beauty, but practice compassion and practice the correct Dharma so that your life would then have great value, would be attached with great value. In a very short period of time of our lives, if we can help others, if we can benefit others, that would be the value of our life. If we can use this short and precious human life to practice and to benefit others, then we can say that our life is indeed really valuable and meaningful. Next verse, it says that in times of sorrow, we hope for joy. In times of joy, we fear the coming sorrow. When we're ill, we would long for health. We have lots of hope, and they would place all of their hope onto medicine. So people who really like all different kind of nutrition and medicines, that means that they don't really have a good health. Poor people like wealth. And the people who are imprisoned, they long for freedom. When you're hungry, you long for food so that you can be fed. When you're sad, you long for happiness. But when you're happy, then at that time you would be afraid of sorrow again. So we're often then in this cycle of fearing for losing what we have and wanting to push away all the sorrow that we have at this moment. People who don't really have any people who don't have any people who lost their job or lost their career, then at that moment they would hope for the best. But people who are having currently a really good career would be fearing of losing a good career. That's how people feel nowadays. So if we are constantly trapped in this cycle, there's no intrinsic meaning in so. The happiness and the hope and the fear are constantly trapping us. In Bodhicharyavatara, it says that where does the happiness and suffering come from? What is the point of feeling fear and hope? If you, of course, right now we cannot completely get rid of hope and fear, but at least, as some say, it's important to dance with hope and fear. This is a way of explaining it, or to deal with the hope and fear. Hopes and fear, if they come up, let's not grasp onto it. Rather, we should try to learn to face it and dance with those two emotions. How we should train our mind is that if my suffering is beneficial to all sentient beings, then let me bear more suffering. If my happiness is not beneficial to other sentient beings, then please let me decrease this level of happiness. It is really the teaching on the mentality of sentient beings. It is not that we can have happiness all the time. In fact, we have highs and lows in our life. We have the road that is not straight, rather it takes turns. So, in this life, we have suffering, then we definitely will have happiness. And similarly, if we have happiness, suffering will definitely tag along as well. Do not consider that, poor me, why do I suffer? And when there is happiness, you would feel really arrogant and really great about yourself. Then, if you're constantly in such fluctuation of feelings, this is really not helpful. But the correct way of working with it is to then dance with them with bodhicitta and altruism. The next verse, it says that cherished and protected base of sickness and disease. Nowadays, our life, in fact, our body is this skin that covers all the suffering and disease inside. Lots of our suffering occur because we have a body. But made elegant, this body is made elegant with ornaments, but its nature is impure. Even if you then have plastic surgery or makeup and use different branded clothing, luxury, and perfume to adorn this body, you should know what this body is made of. If you don't know what this body is made of, then you can go to charnel ground and look at the truth of the body. Lots of people who visit the charnel ground, they would say, wow, this is the nature of the body, really. So the impermanent body has no essence. This body, that nature is impure. In fact, this kind of impermanent body has no essence. In Bodhicharyavatara and Madhyamika, many books talks about how our body doesn't have an intrinsic nature. This nature is impure, but people only grasp onto it because of our attachment. In fact, let it be that your body is beautiful or not beautiful, the nature of it is the same. It's rather quite wondrous in this body that we have. At that time, then we should contemplate. According to Shantideva, he said that we are so we're so deluded. We're such a deluded madman. And these kind of people are then permeating this world. This body is made of 36 kinds of impure material or components, but the crazy people in this mundane world, they would use all different kinds of ways to adorn such impure body. In our movies and in our advertisement, what we see is the beautiful aspect, the visually pleasing aspect of the body, the hair and the adornments and the skin and so on. On the other hand, if we were to expose the impurity of this body or the truth of this body, then how could people, if we were to broadcast the truth of this body that is impure, then I don't think people would enjoy eating and adorn themselves anymore. Just as nowadays, when people visit charnel ground, and after witnessing what happens at the charnel ground, how the corpse is being devoured by the vultures, and then they don't want to eat anything at all. But nowadays, the world and advertisement and all those media, they only want to propagate the beautiful aspect and the adornment aspect for specific reasons that would benefit them. But according to Buddhism, of course, we're not purposely making this body or making this body seem like very devious. We're not doing that, but we're very objectively making this observation. This is the truth of this body. People nowadays, they really like the adornments and the beautification of this body, but it doesn't matter how much and how much effort you put into maintaining this body. It will last for a few decades the most. That was about the body. And then the next one, it talks about how the rich complain from the place of rich, and the poor weep from the place of poor. Everyone has their suffering. Each human mind has its own burden of suffering, and there is no happy time in samsara. Nowadays, people would think that that's not true, that can't be true. People who are rich, people who have high status, they must be really happy. But I think that's only because you never really made very deep observation. In fact, if you make clear and deep observation and analysis, you would see that the rich people, they suffer from the place of rich, and poor weeps from the place of poor. It says that the the ones who have very high capacity and who have high status, they don't really have any suffering of this physical body, such as the suffering of physical body that's endured by farmers or construction workers and so on. But they have the suffering that comes from their mind. But the ones who work, who don't have such big capacity, then they suffer rather from the physical body, but maybe not too much, or maybe even sometimes both mental and physical suffering. People who have People nowadays would consider that, oh, the beautiful people, the rich people, they can't have any suffering and all. That can't be true. In fact, the rich people nowadays, they have lots of suffering. And poor people, they suffer even more, if just as much, if not more. Within the 5 realms, there is no happiness. That's what Maitreya said. In this world, we have more suffering than happiness. When I went to Africa, I really had such feelings. When I went to Africa, I specifically asked them about their life and what they suffer the most. In fact, their suffering, their afflictions are mostly very similar to what we have as well. Some people would say that I don't really have any food. My daughter so-and-so, the leader of the country so-and-so. So they have, as common citizens, then they have their afflictions. And then if they have some kind of social status, then their afflictions are more a bit bigger than the common citizens, but their suffering is very similar. They would consider, oh, the king so-and-so. So they have their complaints as well. If we do not rely upon the external phenomena, if we have the attainment and realization of our mind, then that happiness will be generated from within. That will not be relied from the external phenomena. In general, all joys and sorrows that seem outside are magical creations of one's mind alone, reflections from inside that appear outside, not things outside that have come near. In one word, this means, in one sentence, it means that all phenomena is mind. Just as how the mirror could reflect everything, but it doesn't mean that all the phenomena come into the mirror and then appears inside the mirror. Similarly, all the happiness and suffering, it has the external conditions, but then it is our mind then manifests the happiness and suffering. Mipa Rinpoche said that the wise people the foolish ones would take that whatever the external condition contributes to our suffering and happiness solely. And what the wise do, the wise one understands that the happiness and the suffering are the manifestation of from within and not from external. So happy and sad, it is mainly because of yourself. There are people who enjoy good life, have good material providings, but inside they are suffering quite a bit. Some people from abroad, they told me that, although we're enjoying this rich life, but if we want to send the children into private schools, primary schools, or even kindergartens, it's very stressful. And if the rich are suffering that much because of such kind of stress, and don't even mention about the poor, within our world, I think nowadays people have a very high standard of life, of living. And that standard doesn't really come from themselves. Rather, it comes from the influence of others. It comes from the requirement of the society, such as, oh, the best mother. And people would say that, oh, my mom is not the best mom. The best kind of mom is stayed in so-and-so movie. That's the best mother. My mother is probably the worst according to that standard. And people would consider the same for husband and children and so on. And people would feel that, oh, my husband is so far away from being a perfect husband that's described in so-and-so movie. And therefore, I really dislike him. Our standards are made by the society, are propagated by the media. The media has special intentions behind, and then use different methods, use different language to package their intention. Especially if the movie that they make or TV series they make get really popular in the society, then for a long period of time, the society will have such influence as the standard that is promoted by the society. And then people whomsoever cannot then match to such standard, they'll suffer a lot. And that's really not the most important. What's most important is to know your own standard, to know your own, to be in control of your own happiness, and do not let the external information and standard influence you too much. The later part, it talks about Madhyamika and then Mahāti. Maybe some of you who are beginners cannot really understand it. Maybe it's the best if you can understand it. You can probably feel that, while I can't understand it, it must be really precious. If you can understand it, then you would probably feel that I can understand it. Then what's so special about it? I think this one is included in this book, the collection of teachings. Next one says, knowing this well, when analysis serves the root of basic mind or alaya, the happiness and suffering is no other than our mind, and the root of our mind is alaya. And once you can eradicate the root, then you will abide in the true sky of reality beyond this fog of appearance. What does this mean? It means that once you realize the nature of your mind, then you will understand that whatever you experience before, the happiness and suffering, they are not external. The manifestation of it is no other than the fog of appearance or the smoke. And once the fog is dispersed, you'll be able to see the true sky. Similarly, all of those afflictions, all of those manifestations disappear, then you'll be able to see the true nature of your mind, that is like the true sky. So that's the nature of our mind. For people who studied the great Madhyamika as well as Mahāti, then you'll be able to understand this, maybe have a short glimpse of it. You understand that all of the suffering and happiness and all the external phenomena are no other than the ups and downs of waves of ocean. The next one says that this so-called existence is fiction. The so-called non-existence is fiction. The nature of the mind is perfect Buddhahood, untainted by all such fictions. It means that the nature of mind is perfect Buddhahood. It will not be tainted by all the fictions that it stated above. The mind is already perfect Buddhahood. This so-called existence is illusion or is a fiction. I used Saraha's, I quoted from Saraha. I think I will quote from him. It says that once you grasp there is solid existence, that's the delusion of all sentient beings. And if you grasp on non-existence, that is even more foolish. If you think there is existence, then that's just a delusion. And if there's no existence, how can you say that there is non-existence? I'm not sure for those of you who studied Madhyamika will be able to understand it. What does that mean? Existence and non-existence, it's very natural. In fact, that's not true. Yes, in front of our mind, it seems that in front of our eyes, it seems that this is existent and that is not existent. But after detailed analysis and observation from your wisdom, you see that the existence and non-existence are neither, or they are no other than fiction, because if there is no existence, how can you say that there is non-existence? Those are all fictions. There is the existence is fiction, same as non-existence. Since they're just illusion or fiction, the mind at that moment, which is neither existent nor non-existent, neither good nor bad, that is the nature of mind of great equanimity. That is the true face of your mind. A little while ago, when we were studying Vajrayana teaching, I think many people really had a short glimpse of your nature of mind. You cannot say that there is existence. You cannot say that there is non-existence. You cannot say that there is both existence and non-existence, nor no existence and no existence. And at that moment, and for people who had a glimpse of the mind at that moment, you'll be able to then, and then I think you should abide according to Sakyapantita. The later part is, the next few verses are a bit deep, but anyhow. Thoughts of is and is not are like ripples in water. They follow one after the other. The conceptual mind rise and fall like waves, and dissolving easily into the aimless state, they arrive at the ocean of primordial sphere of reality, that is Dharma Dhatu. Just as the water in our valley would make sounds trickle in the little creek, but when they then join the ocean, at that time the ocean is extremely vast and beautiful, and there's no more trickling anymore. Nowadays we have lots of emotions, so we would smile, laugh, and in celestial beings, just like in celestial realm. And when they suffer, then they would cry, they would weep, and they would howl. Their nose would run, and lips will turn downwards, and tears coming out from their eyes. So our mind is just like that, rise and fall constantly. But when you recognize the nature of your mind, then you will reach a state that's just like the ocean. There's no more rising and falling. There's no more wave-like emotions. So you see such great equanimity, just like Master Jigong. And when Gunam Trupul was locked up in jail, when maybe because different causes and conditions, I think lots of masters of Buddhism, they were either expelled or imprisoned in their life. But at that moment, their minds really didn't change. And lots of descriptions and the stories of their lives are really quite excellent. So do not grasp. What are you looking for? I'm also feeling a bit warm. Nowadays, I understand that our mind is not at the stage of ocean that is of great equanimity. But I hope that whatever you face in your life, I really hope that you can accept. Do not feel anxious and upset and have depression and even commit suicide. Do not do that. There are different things that happens in our life, and I think we can accept them. Whatever comes, and what's the worst? Let's be more positive. The next one, it says that appearances are the magical display of the mind. The mind is empty, without base, without foundation. By holding baseless phenomena to be the self, you and I wander in this realm of samsara. We then wander in the samsara from beginningless time. In some ways, samsara then is the manifestation of mind, and the mind itself is devoid of any fabrication. But people nowadays would grasp onto permanence, and the nature of samsara is blissful, and self is existent, and samsara is pure. If we grasp onto these wrong views, then we'll continue to wander in samsara. Therefore, when we encounter such wonderful Dharma that could lead us to liberation, then we should really chant and repent by practicing the confession liturgy. Otherwise, we'll continue to wander in samsara. Many people, before they become Buddhists, they feel that why Buddhism is so pessimistic. I myself am very optimistic. But at the time of death, at the time of sickness, at the time of failure, at the time of things going wrong, those so-called optimistics really become quite depressed instead. But Buddhism is not like that. At least when you know the truth, you already build the foundation to face all those obstacles. I think it's quite wonderful. So many people already they encounter the teachings of liberation. This is wonderful because think about it. If you do not Because think about it, even a little bit change of causes and conditions, you would have missed the Dharma. Therefore, I really encourage you to maintain your faith and devotion and study so that you can continue to tread on this path. Do not abandon this path. It will become the biggest loss of yours. Many people say that, oh, I lost my job, I lost my lover, I lost wealth. Those are okay, because even if you lose them, you'll be able to still come back onto the right path. Maybe because my perspective is very different, because I grew up in the background and family that believes in the three jewels. I myself consider nowadays there are people who have lots of devotion and very firm faith. Some lay practitioners and monastics, even they slack off on the path a bit. But as long as they still have faith, then that's good. Sometimes I consider that Phuntsog Rinpoche, who has the name of perfect or Jigme in it. This has a very special, auspicious arising. For people who for people whose Dharma name is other than the name of Jigme, or starts with the name of Jigme, which is Yuan in Chinese, it seems that they maybe because of different conditions and arisings that they get lost on the path. Therefore, it's really because of our special connection to Phuntsog Rinpoche and because of our connection to Phuntsog Rinpoche and blessings from Phuntsog Rinpoche, we're still having such faith. And then next one says that without pursuing perceptions, when you look directly at the perceiver itself, you will see your own inexpressible face. The path to attain Buddhahood is not far. In Madhyamika, it says that this is the true realization. So do not get distracted, and do not go here and go there the next day. Many people nowadays are very easily to get distracted and being lured away to different places. This is not necessary to lure people away to different gurus. Yes, if you really like to go and visit a certain guru, that's fine. That's a very personal affair, and I have no business in stopping you. But do not group up others and lead them to it's a tour group. So I really encourage you, in any center, in our Sangha, it's fine for you to have different devotion towards a different teacher, but do not then lure people away to whomsoever you have faith to, because in different events, in different Dharma assemblies, in different kind of events, if you make such propagations of others and advertise for others, I don't think it's appropriate. I myself do the same as well. Whenever it comes to my teachings, I never go to other centers and make advertisement, because this is not respectful to others. In the West, in some countries, they really have lots of respect towards the boundaries. You have to receive the permission from others first. Anyhow, it's important to remember that do not get distracted. The mind that you have at this moment, you should look inward and see if you can see the true face of the nature of your mind, your own mind. I read Phuntsog Rinpoche's commentary of Mipo Rinpoche's Vajrayana teaching. The name is The Gold That Is Spitted Out by an Old Dog. I think Pontsö Rinpoche gave us that teaching on the mountain peak of the South Mountain over there. I think some of you remember that. And I think it's quite important to remember it's running away for 1,000 miles is not as valuable as watching your mind inwardly for one moment. And that's the last verse or teaching from Mipo Rinpoche's Vajrayana teaching. So I really encourage you to practice right at this moment and look inward rather than distracted outwards. Otherwise, it could be very dangerous for you to then generate wrong view, and that would be very dangerous. And the last one, it says that through the blessings of the divine three foundations, and may you quickly find the emptiness of your own mind, and from the kingdom of ever pure great perfection, bring about great aims of boundless beings. The great Prajna Paramita. And hope that the three roots, the protectors, the Dakinis, and the deities such as the gurus such as Pamasambhavan deity as Manjushri and Dakini could then give us blessings so that we do not grasp onto the phenomena that's external. And if we can do that, then we've gained the throne of great perfection, and then we can bring great benefits to boundless beings. The words are written by the wanderer Gundam Chopo. He called himself the wanderer, and this is written for Droma Yangzom, who longs for correct and perfect teaching. Gundam Chopo was living at the house of Droma Yangzom. It also said that Gundam Chopo was painting over there for Droma Yangzom. In fact, Gundam Chopo was very good at painting portraits and painting sceneries and so on. Very special technique at that time. Droma Yangzom married to a British merchant. And this teaching is written by Gundam Chopo in India and give this teaching to Droma Yangzom, who's I think is a merchant as well. In some of the introductions it said so. At that time, not too many Tibetans were living around India, but there are people living there around the 40s from the last century. This teaching is very well known. Many masters would quote from this teaching. Therefore, I really hope that this kind of short teachings could be practiced and read in our daily life, and you can receive a great value from this. Today, I introduced Gundam Chopo from the aspect of a realized Buddhism master. For Buddhists, I really hope that you can understand from this aspect.